I had no idea this was called the graveyard shift at all. So, given that, thank you for your attention. I'm going to endeavour to be worthy of it. That being said, I'm going to start with a quote, which is probably a little bit different than what you're expecting. So bear with me. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom. It was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief. It was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light. It was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope. And it was the winter of despair. And for any of you who read that at high school or know it from later, that's Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. A great critique of life in the French Revolution. And I think a visionary, not just for being a literary genius, but I think he's entirely captured the lived experience of running an OTR tyre service provider business. I'm going to talk in my presentation today around those two themes. It is indeed the best of times, and it is indeed the worst of times. And I'm heartened to see that we were just talking about regulations, legislations, and those are great. Those are all problems that I would love to enjoy solving. But in the OTR sector, we don't really have any. So we don't get to solve those problems yet. For those of you who don't know T&C Site Services, we're a national provider of OTR services. We take care of many types of OTR fleets, quarries, mines, ports, heavy industrial, waste and recycling. Yeah, we sell tyres, we do that. But where we shine is that we take care of fleets, we manage tyre performance, and we get the best out of the products. So let's start with the best of times. I don't know how well known the OTR sector is. I was amazed to see some of the numbers in the early talks. Let's have a look at the market situation. It's very difficult to gauge OTR separately because often it's intertwined, but I've had a go. Credence Research valued the market earlier this year just over £625 million. That's the OTR tyre sector, with a projected compound annual growth rate of around 4.5%. That sounds pretty healthy. And I think in the industry we can see that we've got huge infrastructure projects, there's huge growth. And in the tyre sector itself, that's also in the usual peaks and troughs of tyre sales. That's involved new machines that come with new tyres, so tyre sales dip. But generally there's growth. Our core segments are mining and quarrying, construction and infrastructure, ports and material handling, and waste and recycling. And each of these environments pose all sorts of great fun challenges which we have to try and solve every day. So mining and quarrying has the highest demand for specialised on-site earth mover tyre services. It's brilliant, highly interesting, full of great machinery. Construction infrastructure is a major driver of our growth in this country at the moment. Ports and material handling has constant operational pressure. Some of the most important stuff that we do is keeping the country moving in terms of trade, and those vehicles can't afford downtime, and we have to be responsive. So while the UK OTR tyre market is valued at about 625 million, it is growing. The tyre replacement market, the aftermarket and the service is where we shine, and that's actually proved a lot more challenging. There are more tyre products than ever, which sounds good, and it's good in some regards, and with others, less so. It's very difficult to know performance, very difficult to know history, and there isn't a large market, and I mean volume of numbers, by which you can judge performance. So there's a lot of trial, there's a lot of testing. These are some of the problems we face, the challenges that we have, that my business and others like it take care of. This is some of the positive elements of what we do. There's growth and there's areas, and some of this links to the things you were saying earlier on, and I want to talk about recruitment a little bit and the workforce challenges that were touched upon earlier on in the retail sector. But before that, I want to talk about tooling. Now, I am fortunate enough to work with people who have got many decades in the OTR tyre sector. I'm talking 40 plus, no problem. So I've heard many anecdotes of what work used to be like in the olden days. Trying to take care of large earth mover tyres with no tools, no pneumatics, none of the modern cranes or trucks. Nowadays, we live in great times. We have the best of trucks, we have the best of cranes. The cranes are modified and are able to not just lift things like ordinary cranes are, but they can push, they can pull, they can maneuver. And in fact, when you see some of the things that we do with a crane, as you can see on the screen right now, it looks a bit like surgery to me. This isn't a skill set I possess, this is the skilled stuff that the technicians that we've got do. It looks like surgery. They're using that crane and they're producing those tyres and they are delivering an expert service. And you can't do that with the old cranes. These are the modern cranes. You can push, you can pull, you can maneuver. The handlers work. We live in an age where this technology has made the job even easier than it's ever been before. This is great. Data-driven systems. We live in an age of information. It's been encouraging to see data being at the heart of many of the talks that we do, many of the talks we've seen today. In OTR, I don't know if it's the same as road, and we've talked a little bit about the ignorant consumer customer, I guess, today, but I don't find that necessarily the case in the OTR sector. It's a different buying proposition. It's a smaller number of units with a greater cost of outlay, and the most important thing you can do is get the maximum value and life out of the tyre. And how do you do that? We've got the best data-driven systems that we've ever had available. They're only getting better. We have telemetry, telematics. We can see turning circle and the torque, the temperature, the speed, and it's constantly reported back. This allows us to monitor fleets and get the best value out of tyres. We have never had it so good. We can then integrate all of that system into our own, and the beauty about modern IT systems is that we can deploy any of our analytics, any of the established maths and models, and then we can even run it on AI. And the beauty about modern IT is AI isn't just something available to large businesses, it's available to businesses of all sizes. So we get a chance to use all of the modern science and get the most out of the tyres. We can actually calculate now if it makes sense to turn a tyre on the rim. I don't know if that's something you do in the car world. I doubt it. But it might do. It can be done in this. Tyres don't always wear evenly, especially if you've got a crane hanging off one side. When do you turn it? When's the right time? Is it cost effective with the cost of service? These are all questions that people who run fleets want to know, and we get to answer them nowadays. We operate some of these systems in some pretty demanding environments, and I would say ports is one of our specialties where we see this in action. Constant work, constant use. The machines are always under extreme pressure. That's important. So we deploy all of these systems and get the right value for the tyre. We run inspections and fleet, we get tyres, we do visual inspections. We can understand how all of the tyres operate against all of the different surfaces that we work on. We call them applications. They're just surfaces on the ground, whether it's quarries, ports, mines, wherever you see them. We go and inspect, we go and do, and we do all of the service. This is made easier with the tools. It all combines. We are living in the best of times for OTR. If you've invested in the equipment and you've invested in the technology, there's never been a better time. Products and design. However you look at tyres today, they got better. And that was evident earlier on. I really appreciated the talks this morning because a lot of that I was ignorant to. And I appreciate anything that reduces my overall level of ignorance. When I see in the OTR sector all tyres, and there's more of them than ever before, I think the UK will have the most tyres it's ever seen ever. On there, the number of brands, the number of abilities, the number of types and applications, the cost proposition, the price, the value. We'll see them all. But one thing we can say generally is they are getting better. As the machines are getting heavier and torquier, the tyres are getting better and keeping up and doing it, and we see it, and we can get the value out of it. There are challenges to this in the service provider sector, and you may have parallels with this in the on-the-road and commercial and road-going passenger units. We were traditionally a breakdown service. And that was traditionally how we did things. Someone has a bad tyre, someone calls us up, we go and fix the tyre and then go home. That was great until people decided, wow, I may actually want to start getting better value for money out of this kind of stuff. So then it becomes managed fleet services, managed tyres and all sorts of other bits. The problem is our industry hasn't quite moved on across there. It doesn't change the business model. So that's a challenge. With all this cool technology and better tools, we can do the job faster, better, safer. We get better information, better value out of the tyres. But we only get paid when we turn out. And we don't turn out so much because the tyres are pretty good and we've run them quite well. So we're bringing a ton of value. So the evolution of this good time has brought a challenge. The change of the products has made it so that our traditional business model won't keep up with the way that the economy and the market is going. It's a big challenge for us. We're going to have to change the way people want to pay for things. People still mostly pay for OTR tyre service. I don't know if it's the same for on the road, by the hour. Who actually wants a technician for an hour? Anyone? You probably wouldn't feel much benefit from that, would you? I mean, they're lovely people. You get them for an hour, you can have a nice chat. What you really want for them to do is finish the job, complete the job, and get the job done and finished. But we're still largely in a world where we're running an old model, and we are having a time of our lives transitioning the market to get those value propositions out of the current place. It's one of those areas where the benefit of technology has moved on faster than the market. But I've got to talk a little bit about the worst of times. I think it's both heartening and disheartening to know that the same issues that plague the commercial and the passenger side also are the things that we feel pain in too. Some of the things I would say about Teen Cities, we've traditionally felt like we were pretty much alone, solo. We haven't joined in. And one of the reasons I wanted to join the NTDA is to amplify the voice and our concerns, some of the things we see in our industry. And I think we can do that. I think we can do that. But we're not going to be able to do it without aiming higher. Standards and legislation, as I just said, a great problem to be solving. We're currently stuck in a point now where there are no real legislations off the road. None. Anything could go. Anything doesn't go because our customers have their standards and they may adopt a framework. Those frameworks may be good or they may be applicable. They may be directly applicable, but they rarely are. And then you end up in a position where we're ascribing to one set of rules and then adopting another one for another customer, and then a different set of standards and another one. It's quite costly, this. None of them are enforceable. None of them are regulated. But I know we get there. So we end up with this set of rules, very costly in business, makes the OTR tyre sector very inefficient. So the problems that were just alluded to in the previous talk, about trying to navigate legislation and regulations, I'm actually hoping that at some point in time, the NTDA will help us bring some into OTR. It's necessary. It's really necessary. The technicians that I know work every day can turn up to any job and find it in whatever state. Anyone is allowed to go and work on an OTR vehicle. Anyone who fancies a go. And some people do. They do fancy a go, and boy, do they have a go. And we can turn up to them and find anything. Anything at all. It sounds funny, but until you see a sort of missized O-ring fly out of a multi-piece wheel, something go wrong, and you realize that would probably tear someone in half in short order. Those are the kind of things that we have to be careful of. There's not many legislations around rims either. Nobody has to change a rim. The tyres can be changed, the rim can be 15 years old, no problem, cracks and all. But we don't know what we're going to find when we turn up, and we've got no confidence unless we've managed it or there's been a standard applied to that we can adapt to. So there's a danger faced. all of the time by the technicians that do OTR work. There are no legislations. Don't worry though, there's plenty of frameworks. No problem. I subscribe to 9 of them, whether it's a VETA or construction line or safe contractor. List them. You know them all. And they all apply in different ways, but none of them are quite applicable to what you do, but you do have to follow them anyway, because that's what we've got. And then in between that, we're HGV drivers too, so we've got driving hours to contend with and the HGV problem that was alluded to earlier on, and then we suffer some of that as well. All of that is evident right now in the standards, and we are trying to balance a lot of unregulated market with a set of voluntary frameworks that aren't really voluntary because you won't get the work. We need some regulation. And I know what I'm asking for. My background is in IT and computing, and I know what standards competition looks like. We've got 13 or so now, and I'm asking for one unifying standard. Of course, that's going to lead to +1 standards that will then compete, but none of them at the moment are regulated, none of them are enforced by law, and I'm saying we should probably have some. For the safety of tyre technicians in the OTR sector, I would really appreciate doing it. I think we can aim higher, and I hope the NTDA can help us get there eventually. I think it will be important. Health and safety. It goes hand in hand with the standards. Because without the lack of standards, as I alluded to before, we can turn up to anything, find anything, have to contend with anything, and then perhaps make it right. That's great if people compete, but that's not the market we live in. People have a choice. They can spend the money wherever they choose. But I tell you what, right now, it is one of the most difficult things to balance. We talk about rising costs. We don't have the economies of scale. We have no economy of scale. This is large figure tag value in low volume numbers, and we have to send HGVs to send it. All of this requires cranes, lifting, and all the other bits and pieces that we need, air compressor checks, all the things you would do, plus all the HGV bits. I aren't saying this so that you gain sympathy. I really am hoping that we get this so that we can actually provide a much safer professional working place for the people who work hard every day doing it. It's dangerous stuff. And that leads me to the people who work hard every day doing it. I almost asked a question earlier on, but I didn't want to preempt what I was doing now. What are we going to do about the declining number of technicians? It's not a rhetorical question. I mean, it's a real problem we've got to solve, So, how to put this? A little thought experiment, if you'll join in. 3 chaps in a bar. They're chaps because it makes the comparison easy. There's a plumber, there's an electrician, and a tyre technician. And I've done this thought experiment a few times. I ask people, rank them in order of descending kudos, gravitas. Who's thought of with the highest regard? I've asked a few people, and I ask people outside of the tyre industry because, it removes bias. And I can have a big argument about anyone, about who's first and who's second. But with almost 100% certainty, I can tell you who ends up third. A few nodding heads agreeing with me now. You already know it's the tyre fitter in the third place, yeah? Why is that? Why is that? Gas engineers are important. They're regulated. We used to have Corgi. Now we've got all those sorts of other bits. They deal with pressurized containers. They could blow your house up. They could do it badly. That doesn't sound overly dissimilar from an OTR tyre technician, really. Pressurized containers. Some of the tyres we inflate 144 psi. They're moving around. It's dangerous. If things go wrong, they explode. Get plumbing wrong, you ruin a building, ruin a home. If it's vented, let's assume it's a vented system where there's pressurized water in place. That's pretty dangerous too. It can blow up. But why is the tyre technician third? I don't have an answer for that. It doesn't make sense to me. Seems like a marketing problem. So if there's any marketing specialists in the room, have a go at it. Because we're going to need to figure that out at some point in time. We're going to need to. So as a corollary follow-up to that thought experiment, what jobs would you replace the electrician and the plumber with that might see the tyre technician become number one? Have a think. Now, I've got a problem with this because I think we lost the romance somewhere, especially in OTR. And I'm not known, for people who know me, as a romantic, but I think somewhere along the lines, especially in OTR, it became invisible. I work in schools a lot, and I talk to kids, and I know this. If you're going to dream about being something, you've got to be able to see it. Kids can dream about being an aircraft pilot, no problem. They can dream about being a firefighter, a police officer, a teacher. They see them. They go on holiday. Planes fly. Besides a child getting a Tonka truck, when do they see a rigid dump truck? When can they be in awe of it? A 49-inch rim, massive vehicle. When do they see one? Now, in the interest of health and safety, rightly, we don't let kids play in quarries. Fair. Yeah, it's fair. The thing is, when I was a kid, when it was school holidays, I used to actually go out in the trucks because you could then, and I was wowed by it. And there was a time that's all I ever wanted to be. The only thing that was holding me back is an ineptitude at any practical skill. But I found my way, you know. But I saw them. I used to go out with my father and see them in the truck. He did the tyre fitting. I stayed in the cab. I got to see them. We have done, in the interests of good, diligent health and safety, we've done all the right things by keeping kids out of the ports and the quarries and the mines, but at some point in time we've got to do a better job of letting them see it. Otherwise they'll never dream to be it. I don't know about your own personal experience with the career service at your school, but I always found it was an area where they narrowed dreams down as opposed to expand upon them. There's an approved list of jobs you can have, and OTR tyre technician, I don't think, is in one of them. So no one can actually aspire to be one because they don't even know it exists as a job. Can I earn a living doing that? Forget can I earn money, can I just go and see it? We have got so much to do if we're going to encourage people to take this on as a job. It's not enough that we just create a license. It's not enough that we do some apprenticeships, because we'll just exist along a big pile of apprenticeships that they actually know what that is. How do you aim towards a future you can't imagine? Well, you can't really. I think this is a big deal for us, and it's one of the problems of our time. It affects OTR because the apprenticeship schemes favour the plumbers and the electricians because they're needed in number. The funding model works. I don't know how many OTR tyre technicians there are, but I would hazard a guess that there's no more than 100 nationally. Now, I imagine all of us at some point in time have commissioned the services of a plumber and fixing the leaks. Not the eye-watering bill, of course, of an emergency service provider coming out and doing that, but if there was only 100 plumbers, what do you think the bill would look like then? Ian said something earlier on where our workforce is looking incredibly of one certain demographic. We are going to hit an age cliff soon, and there isn't an army of people replacing them, and there may not be people to train them. So if we don't solve that problem as an industry, we're in real trouble. If you're in the truck game, that's great, but how do the trucks get loaded? They get taken off the container trains. And we help them do that bit. And there's no one who does the tyres. That's the cliff edge that we could fall off so easily. So easily. So I think we can aim higher. And we'll need all of us because it's a problem you share the same way. If you can't get car technicians, but there were petrol heads in the room and people who are interested, so I know that there's some love, there's some romance somewhere for something, but whatever we're doing, we aren't hitting the people who need to come in and join in. I hope we can aim higher at that. Aiming higher is the thing I joined the NTDA for. And I've probably sat alone in my company too long, not really joining in the rest of the industry, and I'm here today, hopefully worthy of your attention, to say the problems you're talking about are the problems I've got too. Some of the niches, the niche parts are different, but largely the same, and I can't solve it without you, and maybe we can help each other. Thank you. I hope you had time. I hope I was worthy of your attention. I hope you didn't mind the Charles Dickens bit. I'm quite fond of literature. Thank you very much.